Welcome to the Showtime in the D podcast. We are your hosts, Chris Langlois.
And Mike Slipchuk.
Great to be back.
It's great to be back. So for our previous listeners, we did have a previous podcast and took a little bit of a hiatus with life getting in the way. But we wanted to rebrand, refresh, start hot, and we'll welcome you guys back. And for the new listeners as well, we welcome aboard. We're looking to go full steam ahead and be your number one sources for Red Wings hockey.
Yeah, I thought this would be a fitting name because we are honored to watch Showtime himself play in Detroit, and he's full of big moments. Lots has changed since our last podcast. I now live back here in Ontario, 15 minutes from the LCA, and both of us are proud season ticket holders, so we're very fortunate to be able to watch the team that we grew up loving getting good again.
Absolutely, and we're both honored to live, so close to the border, and hopefully this is the start of a new playoff streak. Obviously, we've been spoiled over the years, which was ended in 2016 with that 25-year playoff streak. So we're hoping this is the first of many to come for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I always tease my Alberta friends that every year of my life that I've lived in Ontario, the Red Wings made the playoffs. So now that I'm back in Ontario, we'll see what happens.
Could be some good juju, eh?
Hopefully. 22 games left to make it happen.
22 games, and hey, if they hover somewhere around 500, I think we'll be seeing a postseason for the Red Wings this year. And who knows with, you mentioned Kane, with Mr. Clutch Kane, he could be a huge difference maker.
I mean, 3-point night last night. Yeah.
There's been no holding back since the All-Star, or not the All-Star break, the Four Nations break.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that.
Yeah, so on the schedule today, we'll briefly talk about the Minnesota game in Minnesota, specifically the great game Edvinsson had. And then we'll break down the Columbus games, the two Columbus games, one in Columbus, the one in Detroit. And we'll break it down, and then we'll preview some possible trades due to some injuries that Detroit has had, not to mention the cap that Yzerman created, and then we'll preview the next three games.
And not to mention some of the struggles we've witnessed since the Four Nations break. We have definitely our criticisms on one specific line, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. And for me, it goes beyond just these few games. Like, it's an underlying problem. But
100%. Well, let's get into that Minnesota game.
Yeah, so the Minnesota game was interesting because Detroit played pretty good defensively. It was a tight checking game. They got down early, pretty early, and two beautiful shots from Edvinsson tied the game and then ultimately won the game. And I don't know if you noticed it, but the way he shot those two pucks, it was, and I don't want to compare him to the perfect human, but I mean the way he shot the puck and the way he read the play was very much reminiscent of Nicholas Lidstrom.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And before I touch on Edvinsson, I'd like to say, it was actually refreshing to see how resilient the Wings were that game, especially on the road, where Minnesota's they're not necessarily successful at home, but they've had a very successful season thus far. And, after blowing two goal leads late in the two previous games, it was nice to see them kind of, do the vice versa and fight from behind. But yes, no, Edvinsson, pretty reminiscent of number 5 that used to play for the Red Wings.
That second goal of his was a bomb.
The second one, absolutely. The first one, he just made the smart play, stepped in the line one time that got it on net. But what I really liked about the play, and for young hockey players that are listening as well, is the ability to have the head up the whole way, and almost envision where he's looking to place that puck. The goalie probably should have had it, but nonetheless, the factor of that play was his head up was or his head was up the whole time, and he made a great read of the play to step in the line and make the simple play. He had no other play. He got it on net. But the second goal, absolutely, again, I want to reiterate the fact his head was up the whole time taking that slap shot.
Well, not only was his head up, first of all, beautiful pass by Johansson over to Edvinsson, but Edvinsson snuck in. Right, he anticipated where the play could go, got himself in a better position. Nice pass by Johansson, and then he did not make a mistake. I we haven't even touched on this either because this is our first episode with the new podcast. The Todd Father. I absolutely love that we have a coach with hair again. Throw that out there.
Two previous coaches bald.
And not very good either. Don't forget that one. But I like Todd McLellan a lot. I like the way he speaks. My one wish is that he would play Edvinsson on a power play. I don't understand why Edvinsson doesn't get power play time. He has, I believe, 23 or 24 points now on the season, despite the fact he gets 0 power play time. He has more goals than Seider.
Yeah, and it could be that they're, I don't know, like I know Gustafsson's that proven veteran power play guy.
He's proven absolutely nothing this year.
No, which is fair. Maybe they're trying to boost his value, and maybe they're
it just irritates me because when you see him shooting the puck like that, that has way more potential to grow if they put him in an elevated role on the power play. And it's not like Gustafsson's doing really good on the second power play even.
No, and honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Seider on the power play. 1 point as well. I think this season, Edvinsson's taken huge steps. No pun intended with his size, but literally with his ability to jump in the play and try to make things happen in the offensive zone. He's quite silky with the skating, lateral movements, puck management skills are there, and you've seen it with the Minnesota game with those 2 slap shots, perfectly placed, head up the whole way. It would be nice to give him a chance. Plus, not to mention, not just the shot, it's his passing ability. From behind the net, the stretch pass, you'll notice a lot of the Red Wings defensemen will ring the puck around the boards, blindly throw it off the glass. He always makes one or two quick moves to get himself into a position where he does have a lane for breaking the puck out, stretching the ice out as well, and passing it up through the neutral zone from his own zone. I think that would go a long way on the power play. He does have those nice soft hands, and he does see the ice quite well for a young man.
Well, and 5-on-5, when he played most of the time under Newsy alone with Seider, and their advanced stats were unreal. Like their puck possession time, they were in the offensive zone significantly more than other first pairing defensemen in the league, and yet they were getting the hardest minutes in the league. Since Edvinsson was moved to the second pair and Seider is blessed playing with Sherratt on the top pair, Seider's advanced numbers in analytics have went down. They get hemmed in the zone a lot more. And why does that happen? Because Sherratt gets the puck and he just puts it around the boards. Half the time, it's just a giveaway. The other team gets it and keeps it in. And then they cycle the puck around. Edvinsson is extremely good at not just getting pucks out, but transitioning from defense to offense. And that's what the elite teams do. He's like, Seider can do it, and Seider can also skate the puck out himself, but he does not have the outlet pass ability that Edvinsson had. I compared his shot, those 2 shots, to Lidstrom. His outlet passes, the way he does it so effectively and consistently, is also similar to how Lidstrom was. Lidstrom could pass that puck effortlessly to anybody, any of the forwards going up in the neutral zone.
Well, yeah, and just, I mean, I think ahead to the long-term game here, and, he will eventually get power play time, and probably my anticipation, and our anticipation, I should say, is that he's going to be an established power play player. So when he starts playing those even bigger minutes, and he's not even close to hitting his prime yet. So definitely good things for the Red Wings and for Simon Edvinsson on an individual standpoint. But nonetheless, big win on the road. Coming back, like I had said, we saw those couple 2-goal leads Even actually, the Anaheim one was a 3 goal lead, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah.
they had those two quick ones in the short span in the third period. Both those games, they collapsed 2 goal leads under 5 minutes to play. So it was nice to kind of play the devil's advocate and kind of do that to the Minnesota Wild, and they were able to hold on to the 3-2 lead. I believe it was
And,
3-2,
and win in regulation, which
and win in
is
regulation.
important.
Correct, because both
So
those former games went to OT. So
yeah, and I mean, yeah. So I mean, things were riding pretty high considering they weren't playing great,
5 out of a possible 6 points
right? So
to
things,
start
yeah,
post the break. Yep.
yeah. So we were pretty excited going into the two games against Columbus. Like we knew Columbus has been having a good year and whatnot. We saw the potential, the importance, and what it could do in terms of giving us a bit of a cushion if we could have won both games, even if got 3 out of 4 points. But boy, did the team not show up in the first game.
That I would like to erase that one from the memory. It was just what you call an absolute stinker. Every even really good established playoff team has those types of games, but yeah, that what I that game, what I really highlighted the loss on. Yes, there was a couple weird bounces. It's easy to criticize Talbot that he maybe could have had a save or two there. It was just weird bounces. But I put a lot of blame, I guess the blame game on the top line, and more specifically Dylan Larkin. As the captain, we know he has the talent in the game. We've seen it with the Four Nations. He really had a really good tournament for the limited amount of ice time he had. But since then, since that break, his game has been quite flat, and that this might have been his worst game of the season.
Flats being nice, he was awful. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I was at that game against Columbus, and I feel sorry for the people around me because I was using a lot of words. Every time he was on the like, it's one thing to like not produce. Like I'm not expecting him to produce 2 3 points every night, but I expect a level of effort, and I expect him to be able to win some battles. He was losing every battle, losing every face-off. It seemed, and more than that, he was giving pucks away, left and right.
Well, how about that? What really did it for me was the pardon me the 2-on-1 that he had, and I believe it was with Casper. I can't
I
recall,
don't
but
remember who.
he took his time, fair, because he was trying to sell it to the goalie. What am I going to do? Shoot or send it over and pass? But then he was so slow and mishandled that the defenseman was able to just swipe the puck off his stick. And it's just little things like that. Like even the best part of Dylan Larkin's game is, yes, his speed, but when he plays simple hockey. And that's what Todd McClellan always emphasizes. Play effing hockey. Just play the game. Play simple hockey. And I think he was overthinking, and that whole game, it just like he was mismanaging the puck. Simple plays, pucks bouncing off his stick. And Chris, like you said, face-offs were horrible. And you know what? I give Todd McClellan a lot of credit. Going back to how we praised Todd, he does have that backbone, and he's got that stern message in the locker room, and he holds players accountable. So what did he do? Come the third period, didn't like what he saw, and he put him on the third line. And
After
I
that, like Raymond and Casper actually had a decent third period there with a Berggren.
Absolutely. I think that was just a message he sent through the locker room to, hey guys, get your shit together. Yes, he did kind of hone in on Larkin there with the line shuffling and putting him on the third line, but it was a message to the whole team too. Despite there were players that were playing a good game, but it stems from the top, aka the leadership, and it's about time that there was a message sent there, which I did respect
Yeah,
Todd
I
McClellan
agree.
doing.
I agree. So they knew they needed to respond. They knew they had a big game in Columbus for the outdoor game, and honestly, they came in and they got 46 shots on net. They, having said that, like it wasn't like it was a high quality amount. Like they had decent shots and stuff, but it's not like Columbus's goalie played fantastic. Like he played good, Detroit definitely, I thought, was the better team overall, especially in the third period. Like they took that third period over. At one point, I believe the shots were 11-0 Detroit to start the third period. They dominated. And one thing I want to highlight in the game is Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat. And I'll throw JT Compher in there. Like he's been a lot better since he was put with them due to the Klopp injury. That line, along with Simon Edvinsson and Albert Johansson, those five, when they were on the ice together, every single shift, they were in the offensive zone, cycling the puck, generating chance after chance after chance. That line accounted for all the goals, except for the power play goal, of course. But the 5-on-5 goals, that line,
The two of
those
the three
five,
goals they scored,
yeah,
yeah, were that five some on the ice.
those five should have at least got us a point yesterday because we tied that game. Alex DeBrincat, who, boy, is he buzzing. Like he's just riding
He's a
high.
new human being under the Todd
Yeah,
father, as they call him.
yeah. Him and Kane both, like Kane 3-point night as well. And the other thing with Kane that I love when he scored that goal yesterday, it's like he's like a 12-year-old. He gets so happy when he scores. I love it. I absolutely love it. He's won 3 cups, and that's still
The,
not good enough to him.
yeah, the hockey spirit still lives within him. Still a kid at heart, playing the game, which we love. And for the first 35 games under Lalonde, or whatever it was, before he was fired, the team was lifeless and Kane was lifeless. So it's nice to see that spirit kind of revived
Since
the hiring.
McCollum's taken over the team, Patrick Kane is on a 95-point pace.
Goes to show
That's
you what
that's
happens.
remarkable. 36 years old. Everyone who tries telling me that Dylan Larkin's the most talented player on the team, get out of here. He's not even close to Patrick Kane. Not even close. Like, sorry. He's just not. Patrick Kane, the way he slows down a game, the way he controls the power play. Our power play is ridiculously good. Like, it's scary, actually.
It wins us most of our games.
And that's why I personally think the refs decided to screw us yesterday because that's the other thing I want to talk about. So DeBrincat ties the game with, I think it was under the 5-minute mark. And then at the 1 minute 50-second mark of the third period,
No, it was just a little over 2 minutes, I
was it
think.
over 2 minutes? So
Yeah,
Simon
I'm still so
Edvinsson,
frustrated though.
Simon Edvinsson gets high sticked in the face. He's 6'6". I have a picture of where the ref was, where Edvinsson was. The ref is looking directly at him. So I feel that he should have had a nice meeting with some sort of NHL executive explaining why didn't you call that? Like, because then Columbus got a breakaway and then a rebound and scored to win the game with a little over 2 minutes left. That cannot happen. I'm still mad about it, honestly. Detroit should have got a point out of that game, and those refs robbed them of that
Yeah,
point.
that was total horseshit. Yeah, there was a lot of expletives when I watching that and how much I shouted, and it was
Yeah,
just
I
not
don't mind
good.
losing, but do
But
not make such a BS call like that. And then the four officials met up and this like, what did you talk about? How you're an idiot? Like you're right there.
well,
What
and
I
they
think
met.
what I think happened is, he chose not to call it, and then Columbus scored, and he probably said, "Well, I can't say I was going to call it because I didn't put my arm up." Well, this is where I think in a situation like this where such a clear penalty is missed and a goal is scored, I think there needs to be a review process.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about that as well. I believe that they can do that with the delay of game penalty. No, like if
Yes, they can.
if they call a
Delay
delay
a
of
game.
game where the
They
puck,
can check to make
clearly
sure it didn't hit
goes
the
up,
glass.
yeah,
Yes.
and then they, let's say the call on the ice is a penalty,
Yeah.
they can go back and review it. If it was tipped off a stick or tipped off a body or the glass, then they can actually call that back. So for that specific penalty, so maybe they got to make it consistent across the board for all the penalties, like what we just saw, that through the whole game. Like, so let's just say roles reversed, the call was made or the call was reviewed. Let's just say the call on the ice was no penalty. They go to review it and they determine that it was a penalty. Could you imagine how that game shifts,
Well,
literally a minute
and that's
prior.
that's
To,
why that's why it happened, because if they would have called a penalty, it takes away the goal, and Detroit gets a power play, and we
correct,
know how good the Red Wings power play is.
correct.
So
It
you're like Showtime probably buries it and wins it in Columbus, which the NHL, sorry, the NHL wanted Columbus to win. That was the most biased broadcast I think I've ever seen.
they
On the Red Wings' first goal, they were interviewing some dummy in the crowd while we scored our goal. So the screen was like split in half. Like, are you kidding me right now? At one
well,
point, they had a dog. They were showing a dog during the game. So the screen was in half. I was like, ESPN, screw off. The NHL needs to get off of ESPN. That needs to happen.
well,
I wasn't happy with the end of the game, needless to say.
no, and even let's just say the goal's disallowed, they call a penalty, and Detroit fails because it was just over 2 minutes. So let's just say they failed to click on the power play. They're still getting a huge, huge point. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not happy if they lose in overtime, but hey, that point is huge because we all know, like last year, they missed out by literally a point when it comes down to it, that final 81, 82 games of the year, and it could be a point that determines who's in the playoffs and who's not.
Yeah.
So like those kind of games that up, but it was just very frustrating. And again, Detroit was resilient. I'll give them the credit. They were down 3-1. Couple fluky goals, missed coverage from Justin Hall in the third goal, but they were resilient in the third period. They took that 20 minutes and really dug deep, took it shift by shift, and they fought back. So it's too bad that they didn't get rewarded for the effort that they put in, especially in the third period.
Especially those five guys that we talked about, because
Well,
it was another game of Dylan Larkin and his line not doing much offensively. Raymond had a couple of nice shifts in the first period, hit some nice dangles, uh, got a few nice shots off. Him and Larkin actually had five shots in the game, which, I mean, 46 shots on net. You would expect them to have some shots, but I didn't think they had any major sustained zone time yesterday at all. On the empty net, Raymond had a horrible pass, just gave the
oh, the
puck away,
cross ice, yeah, that was just like the cherry on top of the
right? I
frustration after the
mean,
missed call.
like Tom McCollum said, there's no excuses. I don't care if you're tired. If you're going to come back and be this tired, don't play in these international tournaments then.
Well, I was I was curious to see how they were going to start the game, especially how they left off with the Columbus game in Detroit, where they Larkin finished the game on the third line. Yes, he was
Yeah.
put there for the empty net. He was put on that line with the empty net, with the offensive line, but he did technically finish the game on the third line. So I was curious to see what Todd McClellan was going to do. Obviously, he moved him back up for this game, but yeah, no, not a good showing by the top line and specifically Dylan Larkin. I know we're being hard on Dylan Larkin, but I think as the captain and supposedly the leader of the team, we should be demanding a lot out of this guy. He is entering into that prime of his career,
Oh,
and
he's in his
he always,
prime.
well, yeah, he is, and he always highlights how he is super excited to make the playoffs. He hasn't made the playoffs since his rookie year, and he's got that passion to bring the wing wheel to the playoffs. But this is where it matters. Like these are playoff style games, and a leader needs to step up and find that extra level of their game to get to
Which
really push their
I'm
team.
sorry, I'm sorry I'm being so hard on him, but he consistently doesn't do that in games that matter. Like last year in March, we played Washington twice. We lost both times, and he did not play good.
Was that one of those games?
Who did we? Yeah, who did we lose the playoff spot to with that stupid dumb rule? Don't get me started on that. But we lost it to Washington.
Lost to Washington by 1 point.
Maybe if Larkin would show up to one of those games. 2 years ago, we played Ottawa back to back,
Oh
and
yeah,
it was a different team. Like I'm not. Anyways, Detroit got murdered by Ottawa in those two games. Larkin was a no-show. So, at what point can we expect, like, for example, next Monday? Not this Monday, not tomorrow, but next Monday we play in Ottawa. That's going to be a really important game because Ottawa's been winning again.
they're only 2 points back with a game in hand on us.
Exactly. So that's going to be a really important game. Is Dylan Larkin going to show up to that? Because let me tell you, I'm at the point now. If we miss the playoffs again, I think they need to look at stripping him of the captaincy. Like, I'm
Hot
sorry.
take, hot take.
I'm sorry. Like, maybe controversial. Maybe it's the Trump in me, but I'm I'm done with it. Like, you either show up to these big games or step aside and let someone else lead this team.
Yeah, I mean, I
Because you know who
think.
led this team? Sorry to cut you off. You know who's been leading this team? Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat.
Well, if you're going to give the captaincy to Patrick Kane, you're
I'm not
all
saying give
but
him the
certain.
captaincy,
No,
but I'm
but
saying they're showing
he's
up
for
where he
sure.
needs to.
And yeah, I mean that's definitely a hot take. But yeah, I think he could be a way better leader. Like when I say better leader, I'm talking about Dylan Larkin he could be leading by example in a better fashion than what he's been doing especially since the Four Nations break. And yeah, I just think this will be 2 years in a row technically that they're going to be in that playoff contention. And if they don't make the playoffs, that's you got to where are you going to point the finger at? Yes, I know Yzerman's been taking a lot of blame with the moves and this free agent signings, but then you got to look at the hockey team too. You can't blame the coach.
Well, you
New
can't blame
coach.
Todd McClellan, but
He's been phenomenal since coming in. So you got to put a little bit of blame, yeah, on the captain and the leadership group, and specifically Dylan Larkin.
yeah.
So we'll see. They got a lot. They got 22 games left. They're at the 60 game mark. I
Watch
think I
Larkin
did.
come out and have like a 5 point night on Tuesday now that I bashed him.
Yeah, typically, yeah. Just so everyone knows too. Typically, when we bash players, aka Andrew Kopp, Ben Sherratt. Usually, the more we bash him, the more successful the game they have
Well,
in
that
terms
rule
of
certainly
points,
doesn't
big
apply to
plays.
Justin Hall. I don't think he knows how to have an accomplished game.
Well, let's hope he's a buyout or maybe part of a trade package prior to the trade deadline coming up here on Friday.
That's
But
yeah. Well, that's a good transition or segue there, actually, because that's what we had next to talk about some trades. Because the trade deadline is coming on Friday. We have
it's
injuries
a
to
Christmas
Cop.
day for hockey fans.
Yeah, I know what my
That
kids will be
and
doing at school on Friday.
that and free agency is Christmas day for hockey fans. But yeah, we have our insights on what we think the Wings should do and what possibly the Wings could do. Obviously, maybe the two don't go hand in hand, but being hockey fans and hockey, fanatics, we do see some opportunities, especially with the cap room. Chris, we can touch on that, the cap room that they've created, but the opportunities that they have on the roster to kind of strengthen have been kind of areas of weakness for this season. So
Yeah, and especially with like the injury to Cop, Rasmussen's injured short term. The Cop's out for the season, and well, it's not a huge offensive loss. It is big defensively and face-offs, specifically face-offs for defensive zones, like late in games, situations like that, penalty kill.
he is quite quietly sound defensive outcome that.
Well, and
Um,
he's quietly been really good under Todd McClellan. Like, he's one of those players who his whole time in Detroit under Lalone was not like, he didn't look anything like his old self. But under McClellan, like, he quietly was looking more confident, getting even more in on some offense. So it kind of sucked that the injury happened. But I mean, it happened, and Yzerman also created some cap space by trading away Ville Husso for future considerations to the Anaheim Ducks. So I believe the Red Wings have, is it 11 million, or I want to say it's 14 million in cap space now. I think
yeah, and then
it's
there's some stipulation though with yes, Cop is put on long-term injury reserve or LTIR, but I don't know if
it's only if they reach the salary cap, then they apply for that.
correct
That's the way it
that they
goes.
would be able to use
Yeah.
those funds.
So Yzerman
Um,
obviously was prepping for the potential of making a move by moving Husso.
I would think so. I mean, he was slated to be a UFA free agent this summer. So he could have just
He's
eased.
going to come off the books,
He
right?
was going to
Like,
come off the books. Highly likely that he obviously wasn't going to be re-signed. He's playing in the AHL, Grand Rapids Griffins. So you think maybe why is he kind of moving him now when a couple months down the line he could be a free agent, right? So that tells me that Yzerman's looking at something. So one thing I want to touch on with our preview of what we kind of see the Red Wings possibly doing, and I guess hoping that they do, is a second C to second line center. So prior to the Cop injury, we have always said we still don't have a true second line center. Obviously, whether if Casper develops into that or not remains to be seen. He's still a rookie. I think that's probably the Red Wings' hope, but nonetheless, there's a lot of rumors out there, and one guy that there's been rumors for, and I know Chris, you and I would love to acquire would be Dylan Cousins from the Buffalo Sabres. He's 24 years old, big body at 6'3". He's still under contract for quite some time, but also fits the age group of the core that the Red Wings are going to be moving forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where I don't know if like I had to pick one, if it would be second line center or top four D, because I don't know. Like Confer's been good with Kane and DeBrincat, and as long as Rasmussen, not that he's like amazing or anything, but comes back for that depth of another centerman position, to me, I would love Cousins, but for me, we need a top 4D to get Sherratt the hell away from Seider. Like, sorry, Sherratt seems like a really nice guy, but he's just not cutting it on the top pair. Like, he can't. You put him in the third pair, then our third pair is really good. Like,
For
if
sure.
you have a third pair of him and, I don't know, Johansson, or him and Gustafson. I don't like Gustafson. But, so imagine you trade, because another one that Detroit was rumored to be in on earlier this season was Byram from Buffalo,
Bowen Byram, yep.
right?
And I was going to say, in addition to what we were saying with the 2C, I think that is a priority for the Red Wings. But pardon me, I think the ultimate priority, though, the highest priority is, yes, the top 4D man, where they can solidify that top 4D core of having, if it's an Edvinsson Seider pair and Johansson and that acquired defenseman, or doesn't matter, even if Evans is not playing with Seider. But I think, yes, Sherratt needs to be on that third pair, nonetheless, post-deadline.
I mean, the going forward, the Red Wings, they have Sandin Pellikka coming.
Well, let's hope that he's coming
soon.
when his team's eliminated in Sweden.
I could only hope, because my vision, and I have no inside information, I would be playing him with Edvinsson, Swedish connection there. So you need someone to play with Seider, or even if you went like Johansson and Sandin Pellikka, which I don't think they would do, because Johansson, like, while he's older than Edvinsson, he's playing well. Like, he's a good defenseman, don't get me wrong, but Edvinsson's making him look better than he is. Like, that's just what Edvinsson does, right?
They complement each other, but definitely the strength of the pair is Big Ed.
Whereas, I think Edvinsson could mentor Sandin Pellikka, and Edvinsson's size is important, because Sandin Pellikka is only, what is he, 5'10", something like that. Right? He's not
5'10".
He's not a twin tower like Seider or Edvinsson, right?
Nope.
So, I mean, not many are. So,
well, it would be nice for Sandy Pellikka, and the typical Red Wings way is to have a player when they come over from overseas as a prospect is to put them in the AHL with the Grand Rapids farm team. But I just think this prospect in particular has been a needle mover more so than any of our previous prospects of Seider, Edvinsson, and
I truly
Raymond.
believe he has too high of a hockey IQ to play in Grand Rapids. Like, to the point where, like, nobody around him will be able to benefit from his IQ, right? Like, and the other thing, I want him learning from Patrick Kane, right? Like, I don't want him learning from Austin Watson in Grand Rapids.
No, fair enough. And he's used to, as a youngster, he's used to playing competitive games. So he's played in the World Juniors. He's playing competitive hockey with his SHL team this year and last year. Mm-hmm. And you'd move him in essentially to the NHL, where the Red Wings are in the midst of that playoff push. And what better way for him to learn? Maybe you don't start him in the top four and you put him on the third pair. But hey, I think what a jolt for the team to be able to bring young Sandy Pellick over in the midst of a playoff push, and a guy that can move the puck. Definitely a puck mover. Great puck management skills. Great on
And
the
he's not
power
he's not
play.
he's not bad defensively.
And that's how, yeah, no, exactly. And is he going to make mistakes, especially defensively, as a rookie? 100%. But that's how these
Not more
guys
than
learn.
Justin Hall.
And I think exactly, and that was my other point. You're going to get an instant upgrade from a Hall or Sherratt with Sandy Pellica and Gustafson when you
My
insert him in the lineup.
I really want that to happen, but I really truly believe they will bring him over and play him in Grand Rapids to end the season, and then they'll give him a shot in training camp. That's what I think
That'll
will happen.
it,
Unfortunately,
it remains to be seen, but let's try to be optimistic. But yes, realism probably dictates
look how
that,
long it
and
took. Look how long it took for management to grow a pair and let Edvinsson play on the team. Let me
yeah, I
tell
know.
you. Let me tell you. I have a lot of reasons why they missed the playoffs last year, but number one reason, Steve Yzerman screwed up by not playing. He didn't play Edvinsson on Detroit until like early March.
Yeah,
Okay, if we had him for even 10 more games, we probably win one of those and they make the playoffs last year. That's on Yzerman. So maybe
no,
Yzerman should learn from the past and from the Tigers last year playing prospects, right? Like, if we're not going to make a big move at the deadline, then figure out a way to move Gustafson, to move, a guy like Hall, right? Move
any one of those veterans.
maybe Tarasenko, who's been brutal, and then call up Danielson, Lombardi. You have Mazur down there. Like, you're not gonna call up all of them, but these are guys. Santin Pellica, if he came over, these are youth, talented youth, who will inject energy into the lineup, and they will be fighting to stay in the lineup. That's going to be better than useless Tarasenko, who just won a cup last year and is showing no, like he's I don't know what his problem is this year. Like, he's not playing bad defensively overall, but he's just not doing his job. So
Well, no, and you see it with how Casper came in, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's going to remain a Red Wing. They put him in a position to succeed, especially, Tom McClellan put him on that top line. Elmer Soderblom, since he's come up, I know he's a bit older than some of these prospects that you have just mentioned, but I don't see him going anywhere. He's really developed his game to be a well-rounded player. He's a part of the forecheck, blocking shots, offense. He's been sparking some offensive plays and scoring some points. But yeah, we'll see. I think a top four defenseman, though, nonetheless, is something that Eisman would be targeting leading up to the deadline. And they do have adequate cap space, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has quite a bit of interest in a second line center. A centerman that can play versatile, play two way, but also still be offensive. And that a guy like Cousins brings that element. But there is certainly other centermen out there that we'll keep our eye on. One rumor I didn't really agree with, and it doesn't make sense because Eisman keeps his cards to his chest so well and has that poker face that you never know what he's doing. But I did read that Jordan Binnington was the Red Wings were in on Jordan Binnington as a goaltender. I personally don't see that happening.
yeah, they're waiting for Kosa.
Well,
They're not going to trade for a goalie.
Well, I think the ultimate play is that Kosa will be a Red Wing next
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
probably alongside Cam Talbot, given that he's signed a 2-year contract at the
yeah.
beginning of this season. But that's one rumor. I just don't see them beefing up their goaltending. But
Realistically, we've talked about Cousins, Byram, um, a couple others, right?
don't forget
Realistically,
Truba.
Trouba,
Truba,
and
you never know.
Trouba came out and said like Detroit was never actually interested in him, despite all
When
those
he was
rumors.
acquired by the Ducks, yeah.
So my point is, we've been talking about all these players. If Eisner makes a move, it's probably going to be somebody nobody's even talked about.
Typical Eisman fashion.
Because that literally the way it goes, it'll come in at like 2 in the morning. That's the way he does it. So, hopefully he does something. Because last year he stood pat. He told the team like, I trust you, and then they fell apart. And I mean, yes, Larkin was injured for a bit, but I think this year they're good enough. They made up a lot of ground that they lost due to Lalonde, and they're right there, 22 games left. Give them a jolt. They need to make the playoffs. They want to make the playoffs, and most importantly, they know the fans want them to make the playoffs. It's time. So Yzerman, I'm not saying go out there and trade for some rental player. Trade for a guy that you think could be a fit with our core going forward to make our team better now and, 4 years from now.
Yeah, I don't see him giving up. That's one thing too. With regard to the trade deadline, I don't see him giving up big assets for a rental player,
No,
a guy that
no.
they
Now,
risk
if
losing at
they
the end of the
could,
season.
if a guy like Rantanen became available, because there's rumors that he doesn't want to stay in Carolina. If he became available and something could be worked out, the Yzerman was very sure he would re-sign in Detroit. Maybe you look at what that would cost, right? Like it all comes down to cost. Like, what are you willing to give up? Because Detroit's not going to trade Edvinsson or Sandin Pellikka or
Casper.
Danielson or Casper. Right? These are two good of players. He's not going to trade those guys.
The only one of those four I disagree though, Casper, Edvinsson, and Sandy Pellikka, I feel like yes, they're untouchable. I could see Danielson maybe being part of something bigger. He would be the only one though. But even then, I don't know if I foresee him, especially being a centerman, and Detroit needs that center depth for the future.
My thing with him, I always go back to Connor Bedard saying Danielson was the hardest player he's ever played against. That kind of stays with me because Bedard is very talented. And that is something else I wanted to touch on, actually. I don't know if you saw a video going around. No, because you don't have Facebook. You're in the 1920s.
I'm a caveman.
But there was a video going around where it showed Connor Bedard sitting in the penalty box, and he literally looked like he was like gonna break down, like full on cry, like he was holding it in. It's almost like he just got a message that a family member died. Like I'm telling you, it was pretty sad actually. Like, I felt bad for him. Like, but I find the media has been so hard on him this year, and I really, really don't think it's fair. Like, he's what is he? A 19-year-old kid playing on a horrible Chicago team.
A dumpster fire.
Chicago has done nothing to put players around him to support him. Like,
yeah, they signed.
I feel
They
sorry
they
for
acquired
him.
Foligno. They got Taylor Hall. Now he's already traded. Taylor Hall's not even on the team anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, being
Seth
sarcastic, of
Jones,
course.
Like, just
Yeah,
I feel bad
but
for him.
so to recap, I would say I think top 4D, someone to solidify their top four and round out their top four defense core. And I think their secondary trade, if they do make one, is going to be for a second line center / winger or a winger who can play center, something of that nature, to help fuel the second line with Kane and DeBrincat for the playoff push. I do not see us getting a goaltender.
No, I'd actually be pretty pissed off if that's what Yzerman.
But who knows? Yzerman's the most mysterious man, like the guy from the Dos Equis commercials.
Yeah.
You never know what the guy's doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that'll be Friday. Before then, we have 3 games. Well, no, we have 2 games before Friday, and then on Friday we play, like, after the trade deadline is over. So we play Tuesday versus Carolina. We'll be going to that game.
Yep. Tuesday home game. Yep. Love it.
And then they play Thursday at home versus Utah.
Which they better not blow the ass like last year.
That's a must-win game.
Remember the 2 losses against Arizona down the stretch last year?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
they got to show up and just, hey, can't take the team that you're playing for granted.
Yeah.
And then who do they have after the Utah? They have
Friday, back-to-back, they play in Washington.
In Washington, which will be a tough game. Freaking Ovechkin looking to, he's 11 from Gretzky now. It's incredible.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
hopefully we can take care of business on the road.
So with, like, the hockey gods can screw off because yesterday not only did Detroit get screwed out of their game, but every other game went against Detroit, right? Like, Montreal won yesterday, Ottawa won yesterday. Like, it was horrible. So hopefully things take a turn this week. Hopefully Detroit can find their game. Carolina has kind of started playing a little bit better. Because they were not doing very good after they traded for Rantanen. But they picked up their games, so that'll be a tough game on Tuesday. But hopefully hopefully our top line can find itself. And of course, we know our second line's been producing, so
Yep, big week of hockey. They leave it or entering this 3 game stretch. I would say if they can get 4 out of a possible 6 points, would be huge. I think Utah, they have to win that one. If they win one of the Carolina or Washington, I think 4 to 6 would be huge. Anything more is gravy on top. They just got to play it the rest of the season in 3 game segments, almost like how Todd McClellan always says, the first 1 to 3 in the game typically wins the game. They got to almost treat the season like these segments and play it in
and
3 game series.
they have to get rid of these defensive lapses they've had. Like they control part, like that Columbus game yesterday. Like a couple just like Justin Hall completely screwed up his coverage on that
Cider,
third goal. Cider was that
when he
penalty
created that
caused.
penalty.
And then
Yeah.
Edvinsson was weak on his man in front of the net, which led
Yep.
to the penalty kill goal. Right, like those little lapses have been costing us since the
Yep.
break.
Got to
Even
play
in
for
the
60
games we played
minutes.
really good, so they got to go back to, as the Todd father said, play effing hockey, keep it simple. Let's win, right? If we can win like one more 7 game winning streak this year, I think that basically could solidify us into a playoff spot, and then go 500 beyond that. Like
Yep.
they still control their destiny, even though Ottawa has a game in hand. We can beat them in Ottawa, and that settles that. So it's in their hands, but they have to figure it out, or there's going to be a lot of angry fans in mid-April, and I'll be one of them.
And I'll be one of them as well. But yeah,
So
no,
anyways,
thanks for tuning in, guys. We, like I said, we look forward to continuing the podcast. We love talking all things Red Wings. As we move forward, we'll obviously majority of our podcast will be Red Wings, but we'll talk about other stuff going on in the NHL as well. Yeah, happy you're here for the ride.
yeah, and we'll be back next weekend to debrief. Hopefully, 3 wins.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
No more blatantly missed calls.
Yeah. I ref 3 games today, and the whole time I was refing, I was thinking about that. As like, because I called, 2-3 penalties each game or whatever it was. And I was like, what would happen if I just didn't call that because I didn't want to? No, I'm
Dude,
not
the
going to do
parents
that.
would be happy.
No, some parents are just psychos because, no, they were good. LaSalle parents are good.
Good.
So,
Well,
anyways. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And tune in next time for everything Red Wings and more.
have a good night, guys. Cheers.